If the car really passed an inspection, it's a world record car. In the last 10 years at Curated, we have sold hundreds of Countachs and Diablos. It's what I grew up around as a kid at my father's service facility. I look at those cars as way more than just a supercar. I think they're art. I think that they're undervalued. I think they're underappreciated, even in today's pricing. And every time I'm around a Countach, I'm never jaded. I feel like I was when I was 8 years old and getting excited for the first time getting in a Countach. Same with the Diablo, same with all these cars. And we have constantly been chasing just these grail cars. You know, when you start thinking about Countaches and you think of what's the best variant, and, you know, I think there's so many different variants of Countaches because they were built for so many years, and people forget that. 1974 until 1990, Countaches were built. And I think today there's a lot of confusion around the greatest examples or what could be the greatest. Now, in my eyes, for many years, the collector car world has felt that the Periscopio, which is the original early car, the Gandini design, clean design, no flares, the skinny wheels. There was 150 built between 1974 and I think 1976. And most collectors for many years felt that those were the most special, the greatest cars made. And listen, the market showed that between 2012 and 2017, 2018. Those cars were trading between $1.2 million and up to $2 million, depending upon color and mileage. In my opinion, I always saw a different sort of theory behind that because I started talking to collectors and entrepreneurs, and I started realizing that the Countach is way more than a supercar for many reasons. One, and I think the most important, is it really is this object of aspiration. I can't tell you how many collectors that I've met that have said, the reason I started my business or became an entrepreneur is because of the poster on the wall. I always think of the Countach as also symbolic with the American dream. I think they're one in one. It's like this idea that anything is possible, it's achievable. You think of the car as a concept, it's so insane. Anything's possible. And, a lot of these collectors today, this next generation of collectors, are always asking me about, what do you think is the most special? The one I had on my wall was this, or the car I first saw in the movie was this. And most of the times, they're describing an LP400S. And the LP400S was the first car made after the Periscopio, and it was the first Countach with flares. It was the first Countach with wide wheels. It was actually the first time Pirelli had designed a tire so large, which was the original P7 tire. It was for the original LP400S. So when you think of its impact, that's really the Countach, remember. The first car that was wide, the fat wheels, cannonball run. I could go on and on and on of what makes an LP400S special. Now, the early cars were actually sort of inspired by some one-offs that were built for a very important client of Lamborghini, Mr. Walter Wolf. Now, Mr. Walter Wolf, larger-than-life entrepreneur. This was a guy that, had a Formula One team. He was in the oil business. He was in the cigarette business. He did a lot of things. One of the other things he did was he loved Lamborghinis. And he, at the time, working for his F1 team, had Mr. Dallara, and he asked Dallara to help him build a special Countach on an early Periscopio. And what he would create was the first Countach with flares, the first Countach with wide wheels, and that would eventually become the LP400S. Now, the first LP400S that was ever shown was his actual car. It was a car built between him, Dallara, and Lamborghini. It had these gold wheels, and if you're a Countach nerd, those wheels were called Bravo wheels. They were a little different than the normal Countach wheel. They had sort of these cutouts around the holes. And those early cars, because of Dallara's Formula One sort of background, if you look at the early cars, they're actually, the front wheels are tucked in, the suspension is different, and the rear wheels stick out a lot like a late 1970s Formula One car. So a lot of cool facts around those cars. The first 100 150 cars, 150 cars were actually called low bodies because they were on the original Periscopio chassis. So it's a lower roof, different suspension dynamics, and much lower car. So when we're talking about Countach sort of hierarchy, you could honestly say that the LP400S has to be or could be one of the most important Countaches made. Now, Countach nerds and real connoisseurs know that the first 50 LP400S all came with the Bravo wheels. That was that Walter Wolf style looking wheel. And the first 27 came with early periscope gauges, the Stuart Warner gauges. They're called small gauges, and they're very actually funky, cool looking. They're very 70s-esque. Now, if you're a real Countach nerd, you know that of those 27 cars, most were red, and there were a few one-off colors. One of the colors being blue Tahiti. Now, many years ago, it was around 2010, 2012. This is even before starting Curated. I started just making databases and registries of Countaches and thinking what could be the most special. You know, I'm a young guy on forums and I'm talking to people, and I hear about this car, basically chassis 1016, and it's this blue Tahiti on Sanape, gold wheels, LP400S Series 1 low body, small gauge car, so early car with original paint, original interior, and about 6,000 miles. And I just fall over. I'm like, where is this car? I actually, on an old forum site, I actually wrote, I'm in love with this car. Wow. And the car had sort of disappeared. So originally, this car was delivered new to a California-based entrepreneur. I have no idea how he got in the US, but apparently he went to Lamborghini and he ordered 4 Lamborghini Countaches. Imagine doing that in 1978. Anyways, ordered 4 cars, brings them to San Diego, and basically drives them around this car. There's some great photos of chassis 1016 at the factory. There's some great photos during its production, and there's some great photos of the car in San Diego. Fast forward, the car apparently gets left in a building or something. There's some photos of it covered in dust, and then at some point, so imagine this is at a time when Lamborghini is building less than 30 cars a year. Lamborghini builds 10,000 cars a year today. That would be like someone calling Lamborghini and saying, I'd like to buy 1,000 cars. So hats off to Steve Dipvik, I think his name was pronounced, for ordering 4 brand new Lamborghini Countaches. And I would say we believe around the late 90s, the car ended up in Japan. Now, the car ended up on the second floor of this little dealership, hidden away, sometimes covered, sometimes uncovered, but definitely covered in dust. Fast forward, over the years, there's been some, spotters that have seen it, taken photos. The car's never moved. It's never started. It's never been to any shows. It was never advertised. And anyone that asked the owner was told that the car would never be for sale. About 6 months ago, I get a message from a friend of mine that says, hey, I'm in Japan. I'm searching for some cars. What would you be interested in? And we start going down a list. Because listen, at the time when the Japan economy was booming in the 1980s, I will tell you some of the world's greatest cars ended up in Japan. And this being one of them, chassis 1016. So I said, hey, listen, go try to visit the owner, see if he would take an offer. So good friend of ours, Camille, he makes a very large offer, and the owner says, thank you very much, but no thank you, and he leaves. Over the last 6 months, we started increasing that offer. And in that time, I was fortunate enough to see photos, and I was blown away. I would tell you, old Countaches, especially the early Countaches, do not age well. The dashes fall apart, the interior falls apart, the foam in the seats falls apart, the paint cracks everywhere. And most Countaches from the 1970s or early 80s need to be restored. It wasn't really until about 1988, 1989, once Chrysler was involved, that you really see very well preserved Countach 25th anniversaries. You see these later cars that are very nice. The paint lasts, the interior lasts. The early cars do not last well at all. So I'm starting to see these photos, and every photo additional I get, I think my price goes up. And I just finally say one day, I said, just go make this offer. And at the time, it would have been a world record for an LP400S low body. But in my opinion was, if the car really passed an inspection, it's a world record car. The highest public sale for an LP400S low body in 2014 was around $1 million. This was for a 1,000-mile bronze colored, this is called a Rame Colorado car. It was not running. It was very, very low mileage. Condition, from my understanding, was very nice. But blue Tahiti has to be one of the greatest colors of all time. And, it's been many years since 2014, and I felt that this car was just priceless. Fast forward, we agree on a very large number, and I send over a good friend of ours, Mr. Chip Davis, a very, very fussy inspector. And the reason I send Chip is, listen, sometimes his eyes are better than mine, and two, let's face it, I ask him to destroy a car. Find anything you can find wrong and pick it apart. Most of Chip's reports are pretty pessimistic. I mean, they are just, John, I don't know, this doesn't look too good. And I'll never forget, one night I'm at home in bed and email comes through and it's Chip's report. And I'm pretty excited. I start looking through it and I am blown away. Chip, I could read through the words. He could not be more optimistic. He could not be more blown away. And he called it a potential Pebble Beach preservation winner. I obviously wired the money and ended up with the car. Now, I would say in my career of having, hundreds of Countachs and Diablos, this could be the car that checks every box. I call it the grail Countach for us, just because the color's so great, the preservation's so great, the model, the year, the history. But it wasn't until the car arrived to Miami that I just really knew how special. We have a young guy, he's been on the channel before, Steven, that works with us. He's a little bit of a savant, especially in the way that he looks at cars and, judges cars, and he was blown away. I knew when I saw his face it was something special. The car got pushed off the truck. The car has not been running in about 20 years. Everything down to the dash, the interior, the carpets, the shift knob, the steering wheel, the wheels, the lights are just... It looks like the car's a year old, maybe 2 years old. The paint is in beautiful condition. I don't know how this car survived the last, 40 plus years in such a state, and really just blew my mind, surreal. I have stated, we're negotiating a few deals on the car right now, but I've stated that this car can never be restored. We will send it back to Italy. All the mechanical will be gone through, but not cleaning anything, not touching anything, really just preserving everything, just getting a running state where it can be driven and enjoyed if someone wanted to. This is one of those experiences that you never imagined, and this is why I call this the Countach Grail.
If you get a ticket, the first thing you should do is text a picture of it to 305-305. That will get the ticket clinic on your case immediately. You'll be facing costly fines, risks of suspension, possible jail time, points on your license, higher insurance premiums, and a lot of bad things that they can help you to avoid. You can also find them at the link in the description below, but the ticket clinic is a nationwide law firm with brick and mortar offices in Georgia, Florida, and California, but they've got attorneys everywhere, and that's what's most important, because a local attorney will know exactly how the local laws work, know the people who are in charge, and get you the best outcome possible. So text a picture of your ticket to 305-305 or click the link in the description below to fight your ticket with the Ticket Clinic.